All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy to be jumping on this live chat with a couple of close friends that have gotten me through a number of nervous breakdowns through live UFC fight coverage weeks. The legends in the game. First up, off the bat, you know him from his incredible work with MMA Junkie, the one, the only, Mike Bohn in the house.
What's up, man?
And the other man here as well, wearing a very tasty hat. You know him from his amazing work with MMA fighting. The one and only Jose Youngs is in the house. Now, fellas,
acknowledge us.
Correct me if I'm wrong, fellas, but are we making a bit of history here? Is this the first time at MMA fighting and MMA Junkie, or for a really long time, first time in a really long time, being together on a live stream? Am I bringing people together here?
I would assume on a live stream. I know there's been stuff done on recorded post shows and what have you, but in terms of live stream, I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Yeah, at least in this era, I think. Yeah, I don't know about back in the day, but I don't know if they did much live streaming back in the day,
Nope.
so this is probably a safe bet.
Now, before we get in, oh, dude, it's great to have you guys. Before we get into it, as people jump online and start getting amongst it, got to ask you fellas, have you been feeling the aftermath of this Sphere show? I'll go with you first, Jose. I saw some footage of you because you were there live. You were kind of like taken aback. You were looking up at the sky, a little bit like Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. Break it down for us, brother. How's it feel now that it's been some time?
Last week, Noche UFC Fight Week itself it felt like a month. That was one of the longest fight weeks in terms of work, in terms of interviews, media day, press conferences, mostly because like Mike's covered and you guys have covered UFC events in Vegas. There's kind of a routine where it's the Apex, the T-Mobile, the Apex, the T-Mobile. Everything was kind of distanced out because the Sphere wasn't easy to get to. Then you had to go back to the Apex. Then you had Contender Series Tuesday. So last week felt like one of the longest fight weeks I have ever been in terms of work. So by Saturday night, I was pretty burnt out from all the heavy lifting. Plus everything was outside. So September in Las Vegas is still in the 90s. So everyone was just like kind of overheated. By Saturday night, I was pretty burnt out and I was like, let's just get through this fight week. By the first fight, I was locked in. I was like, I don't know if we can swear, so I won't, but like this rules. Like the Sphere was pretty unbelievable. I'm glad I went. That was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced, both professionally and personally. That was something electric. That was magical. I don't know how it came off through the broadcast, because as you guys know, during post-fight scrums and press conferences, you don't really get to watch the fights because you're interviewing fighters. But when I was out there, it was something else. That was unreal.
Well, Mike, I wonder if you and me can guess how many flight delays Jose had on the way home. What do you want to do? What do you want to go with, Mike? You want to go over, under? You want to go like...
Seems like he's already ruined it for us. He didn't lean into the fun there, so I guess 0, unfortunately.
Zero flight delays? No way, Jose.
0 flight delays on Mexican Independence Week, beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. You know, whoever was up there was like, we can't have Jose be delayed on his way to Mexican Independence Day Fight Week. So no delays this time, which is shocking for anyone who knows me.
Oh, baby. And of course, I got this Boston top on here for you, Jose.
I love that.
My favorite football team. It's my favorite football team.
Put it back up. Put it back up. Put your shirt back up. And you said it's your favorite football team. I'll let Mike.
Is that what you guys do over there? You guys play football? Is this football?
Isn't that the Boston Bruins logo?
That is correct.
You're in the wrong sport. This is just
I wanted to see the reaction. I thought he was going to lose it at me. He was actually quite kind about it. Of course, Boston Bruins. We'll be talking about Happy Gilmore too before we wrap up.
Love that,
Mike. We're in the aftermath of UFC 306. Let's get straight into it, man. Sean O'Malley, he's been kind of fun on social media after this fight. He just put out another post saying that he won like a bunch of rounds. He got the belt out in a video and he said, Umar, you're next. What do you make of his sort of way of dealing with the loss and some of the stuff that we've seen from him?
Yeah, he rewatched the fight, I guess, was his whole thing. And he had like the round by round scoring. I don't know. I mean, this is not surprising, I guess. He was very humble in the immediate aftermath. And then we heard about an injury and then now we're getting this. So it's kind of traditional coping for a big fight loss in some people's eyes. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't you could make an argument Sean won 2 rounds. I don't know where you make the argument he won 3. So I don't really see where he's coming at if you're like actually taking it seriously and trying to see if he's being honest and sincere in his analysis there. I just can't give him 3 rounds in that fight. So I don't know. He's just in the grieving process of his title, I guess.
I got to ask you guys this because I spoke to Javier Mendes about this week, and obviously LJ came on literally right before he pulled out of his fight. It didn't say anything to me, which absolutely killed my interview, but what can you do about that? He's a nice guy. But he spoke about it too. What do you make of this whole Tim Welch cornering situation? Like, I'll go with you first, Jose. Like, do you think it's cheating if you're in the corner of the opposing fighter and you're making calls to that fighter, like trying to sort of confuse them and throw them off their game? Or is it a situation where, you know, all's fair in love and war, you know? And Mike, I know you know about love, so we'll have to go to you after Jose.
I don't think it's cheating. It's certainly not honorable, and it's certainly not sportsmanlike if that's how you want to look at it. But I can imagine, and I've not ever asked anyone this, I bet Tim Welch is not the first person to do this. I just think the camera was on him, and it's kind of, he had the most spotlight on him, especially with Sean O'Malley, who everyone was saying one of the biggest stars in all of the UFC. So when his coach does something, a coach, might I add, that has kind of put himself out on the spotlight too, because like we did an interview with John Wood, and who was in Merab's corner, and John Wood was like, that's not our job. I don't care if other people do it, but I'm not going to hold it against them. But I just don't think that's what coaches should do. It's certainly not cheating, but it wasn't on. It's just not sportsmanlike. That was his phrases, and he said something to the lines of, when Sean would mess up during the fight, normally John Wood would not say anything. But because of the history of there, John Wood would scream across the octagon being like, hey, Tim, did you teach him that? Did you teach him that, Tim? During the fight. And then after the fight, he talked a little bit of trash, but he said after that, he had nothing against Tim and was all in the heat of the moment. I don't think it's cheating. It's certainly not. I don't like it, but what you going to do? What you going to do?
Brother, what you going to do when the big Tim Welch runs wild on you? I mean, Mike, Tim might be the most successful guy at it, right? Because it seems like he's gotten into people's heads a couple of times. You can't argue the fact that he got into Merab's head if you got Herb Dean yelling at Merab in the middle of the fight, right? Like, job done by Tim just for that point there. And also, Mike, you're muted your mic for some reason. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. It's not really like a proven track record, though, right? Aljo said that he didn't hear it when, like, the whole famous first comment where he tried that in the corner of that fight.
True.
So, you know, I don't know, like Merab took care of it pretty quickly. And if you're saying that affected his performance, I mean, was that like, then what was the performance it affected? Because he won pretty clearly in my mind. So
yeah. It's true, dude. I mean, and the thing with Merab is he's kissing Sean O'Malley's back. Like, this is not a guy he's not like a GSP who has to stick to a clear game plan. There is no game plan for this guy. He's just Merab in there. So it's not the kind of guy that you want to affect mentally. In terms of what's next with Sean O'Malley, Mike, just sticking with you for a sec, who do you think the UFC should give him? Is it a situation where he sits out and waits? I know, like, Umar's already saying he wants to defend the belt against him, but technically doesn't make that much sense, right? Like, the guy's coming off a loss.
Well, Cory Sandhagen's calling for it pretty loudly, so that would be a good fight. I wouldn't say no to that, but I guess the question is, if he's actually going to be out 9 months to a year, what does the division look like? Because if you're Cory Sandhagen, he's probably trying to get back to a title shot, maybe 1 win away, 2. Like, do you wait 9 months for that 1 win? That's a pretty long time. And then what if you don't even get the fight? So it's hard to say where, like, the division will be at. The fight I said in, like, my post-fight matchmaker thing, just that I thought would be fun, would be Aldo, whether he wins or loses at 307. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Striking fight, not a bad style matchup. A great for Sean O'Malley to fight and rebound against, all that stuff, especially if he wins. He'd be on a pretty nice high, and I think he'd be willing to wait maybe 7 months or whatever it would be by that point, and I'm sure Sean would love that matchup as well. So to me, those both seem fun, but you could do anyone in the top 6 when he gets back. It just depends who's won, lost, fought by that time.
What do you think, Jose? You reckon? I'd love that matchup, Mike. That's a great call right there. What do you think, Jose? And also, do you think we see Sean make it back to the title and become champ again?
I don't know if he'll become champ, because Umar and Merab seem to have a skill set that doesn't really play into Sean O'Malley's strength. So as long as they're kind of floating around the title, either if one of them, if not both of them, have held the title by the time Sean comes back, I think that's going to be a real tough go for Sean O'Malley. He's not facing, an injured Aljamain Sterling who had just fought a 5-round fight weeks earlier and then has to cut back down to 135 again and was clearly compromised. In terms of who he should fight next, I do love the Aldo fight. But selfishly, I really want Jose Aldo to fight Dominic Cruz more than anything in the world. I've been asking for that fight for 15 years. I'm going to keep asking for that fight.
You're still on the train? You haven't given up yet?
No, dude. WEC never die. The two greatest WEC fighters of all time are in the same division and they're not fighting. Like, give me a
Dominic
break.
Cruz even fighting anymore? Is this man retired?
I don't know. That's another good question. But in this fantasy world that I am concocting, he is 100% fighting, and the only one time he's coming back is to fight Jose Aldo.
He was going for a spot at the Sphere, I think, for a while there, and against whoever, and obviously it didn't work out. So, and then obviously fighting on that card, I don't know what he comes back for.
And then there are obviously the rumors of him allegedly fighting or offered to fight Aldo in Brazil on that time. I'm sure the people that make social graphics had that teed up and ready to go. Regardless, I want that fight to happen. But in terms of Sean, though, I think it'll depend on A, who has the title, A, and B, where these fights are going to take place, because the Apex is currently under construction. So they're going to have to bring fights on the road for a lot of these fight nights now. And if they're looking for locations to have for guys to fight, if they do it in Arizona where Sean lives, I think the obvious one would be Henry Cejudo, just because they're both from Arizona. They're both very different people, and they both have this rivalry that's already kind of established and built. I think that would sell itself in the state of Arizona. But I think Cory Sandhagen would be the most fun, and it would probably be the more direct path to the title for Sean if Cory does take some time off. I don't know where that would take place. I'm not really sure. Either Vegas, Florida. You stick that on a big ESPN or ABC card somewhere in the States, maybe LA. There's rumors they're going back to LA sometime next year. Or he could even, like, if say Umar fights Merab and at early next year, and Sean could fight the loser of that because they would both be coming off of losses. Or he could fight, the loser of Davidson Figueiredo and Petr Yan. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Ask me again in 9 months when Sean O'Malley is allegedly coming back and we know where these fights are going to take place.
You got it, brother. I'll schedule a show for then. Hey, by the way, Mike Bohn with the compliment in the comment section. Aldo versus Sean. Amazing matchmaking. How about that?
Can you go wrong at bantamweight, though, dude? This division's so good. Literally pick any two names in the top 15, and it's going to be like, your answer would probably be amazing matchmaking, I guess, unless it's Aldo versus Mario Bautista.
And let's not forget, Mario and Kyler Phillips and Sean O'Malley are all training partners. I can't imagine they'd want to fight each other unless it's for the title. Kyler has long said, I think Mike, you were in Saudi Arabia for the last Miami card.
It was,
right? Yeah. Kyler Phillips was on that card and Sean was the headliner. He's like, bro, we fight every day in camp. Why not get paid a bunch of money for it? So I don't think that's going to happen unless it's for the title.
Could Sean O'Malley headline a pay-per-view without a title?
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
Who knows these days, right? Like, look at UFC 307. You got Alex Pereira, but how long do you have him around to headline every single card? Mike, just quickly, Umar versus Merab. Who's your pick right now?
Umar, I think. Yeah, he's the one I go with. But it's so hard to say, man. Like, the bantamweight division. That's why I don't try not to be too harsh to Sean O'Malley in the aftermath of this. Like, one title reign in this weight class, even if it's like a hand-picked Cheeto Vera rematch, you didn't deserve it, is still somewhat of an achievement because this division is insane. So I don't know if Merab can hold on to it for very long. Umar seems to be the one everyone's claiming was going to be like destined to have a long reign and maybe carry this division for 3, 4, 5 more title defenses than that. But I mean, I don't know if anyone can really do that. This division's so competitive.
Jose, just before we get off this card, man, I got to ask, obviously Canelo, there's this whole thing about, he fought a guy that was, not really up to his level. This wasn't really the kind of fight that was like amazing compared to obviously Merab versus Sean in the Sphere. But we saw 650,000 pay-per-view buys. Mm-hmm. We saw a very, very respectable gate at 17 million. Of course, the UFC did 22 with elevated ticket price numbers. But what kind of numbers are you expecting from the UFC in terms of pay-per-view buys here? Because I got to be honest with you guys. I had so many people come up to me being like, there's a UFC card this weekend. It was like no one really knew. And then also, I don't know about you fellas, but I noticed the numbers as well online. Like, people weren't as interested in clicking into stuff. Like, they're a bit low. What do you think it's going to be?
I don't know an exact number because I don't know what is considered a win in terms of total pay-per-view like sales in this digital age anymore. Like 1 million pay-per-views seems like the benchmark for like a home run, and I don't know anyone outside of Conor that will ever sniff that in the UFC. Even Conor, I don't know if he'll ever sniff that again, just because, you know, the ESPN era and all this other stuff, or where the UFC goes next year. The prices have kept going up in terms of total. What's a pay-per-view now? $80 US, $75 US.
Yeah.
I don't think Sean O'Malley was necessarily a pay-per-view draw to begin with, but I do think the Sphere was a big selling point. And I know Dana is, you know, talks in hyperbole and he kind of exaggerates a lot of things, but I actually do agree with him that I think people were very interested in how the Sphere would look, because this isn't just the first combat sporting event in the Sphere. This is the first sporting event, period, in the Sphere. So I know a lot of people were tuning in, but I think it's going to be one of those things where a bunch of people get together to chip in $80 to watch the Sphere together, if that makes sense. So I think if I could count the number of eyeballs, there's probably so many eyeballs on this card. I just don't know if that translates to pay-per-view sales, because I think big groups of people, like, because $80 for multiple televisions is a lot of money, especially in September when we had the double pay-per-view in July. We had Israel. I think Israel is a big pay-per-view draw, and we got Max and Ilya next month. We got Francis and Ngannou next month. So people got to be picky and choosy with where they're going to buy UFC. And the card itself, outside of the top 3-4 fights, didn't really have a lot of selling. It wasn't really a big seller. Muted.
Mike, you muted yourself again, brother. And before you go with your answer as well, Mike, I know you're big on the numbers. No pressure on this, but when was the last time the UFC had like an impressive pay-per-view buy rate, from what you remember?
You just don't know, because the numbers don't come out, right? Nothing's been public in this era. I mean, you could say definitively Conor and Nate too. That would be like the biggest of the big, you know, like, be up there. But yeah, I mean, Conor, Habib, all that stuff. But in the past 5 years, we haven't really got anything. 6 years. Just
before we move forward, what have you guys heard about this whole boxing thing that Dana might be cooking up? You think he's actually going to go forward with this now that he's got the connections over there, or you reckon that he's going to stick to MMA? Because I mean, this guy loves boxing, right? Like it's his first love.
He seems to be wanting to stick his toes in pretty much anything not the UFC these days, like whether it's Power Slap or Contender Series or The Ultimate Fighter. He's always selling those products and not really selling the UFC. And I get it, the UFC kind of sells itself, and you don't really need to put Dana White on the front line selling stuff. He seems to be absolutely infatuated with this Callum Walsh kid, and that kid is super impressive. I don't know if he's ever going to be a champion or what the big draw was. But I mean, Mike, you were there. Like Mac, Dana was wearing Zuffa boxing shirts every single face-off, and what did that turn into? Almost nothing. And if you're not going to do anything after Conor fought Floyd Mayweather, then I don't know what it is now. But maybe he's being smart about it. Maybe this new digital age has changed his mind.
Do you think we see it, Mike?
I think we could see it in some form with, you know, the whole TKO relationship. It helps to have another entity, all those things. I don't know if it's going to be something that changes the sport of boxing, all these like promises or comments that could be made, but I could see them doing something that's like, you know, some sort of promotional arm or fight cards. I don't know if it's going to be high level or low level or all that stuff, but I think something will form at some point in the next couple of years here.
All right, let's move on to the UFC lightweight division, fellas, because this thing is getting interesting here. We were all in Perth, and then we saw Oscar do a great pub talk with Dan Hooker, where Dan was basically talking about fighting Charles Oliveira next, a fight that I actually was really pumped for and excited about. And then, boom, we see Charles is fighting Michael Chandler instead at UFC 309, which kind of confused me a little bit, because it's like, okay, I kind of get it, but at the same time, I don't know. I really thought that Dan Hooker fight was the one to make next. What was your reaction when you saw Chandler and Oliveira, Mike, actually fighting next now, instead of this Dan Hooker Charles Oliveira fight that was supposed to happen around, I guess, December?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends if you actually believe it was supposed to happen this time after Dan Hooker fake announced it the first time. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. How much of this fight booking was like out of necessity? Did they need a marquee co-main event that they could help sell the Madison Square Garden card and only have one title fight on there with John Jones and Stipe and still have it be a big enough show. I think Michael Chandler has, like, even though he hasn't fought through this whole process, I think he's gained more recognition and star power and notoriety, whatever you want to call it. So this seems like a good time to step back in, and he decided to stop waiting. So I guess here we go. I think the Oliveira fight is something that makes sense for him, as crazy as it kind of sounds for him to be like, I'll get, Islam or Arman Sarukian if I win this fight. I don't think it's impossible given what I just said there about like his name value. So if you're going to roll the dice and do something different, I guess this is a pretty good alternative, given like the fighting upside, but the actual fight itself, I mean, you go in there, I was pretty confident he was going to beat Conor McGregor, and I have been for a long time. This one, I do not feel nearly as sure about. So it's a huge risk for him.
Yeah. What do you think, Jose, man? It's an interesting, Javier Mendez was on the show this week, said he loves the fact that Chandler's fighting Oliveira. Apparently, like, him and Islam would be super pumped if Chandler won, because that's some fresh blood for him to fight in the division. I guess matchup wise, right? Islam loves that fight too. But what did you make of Charles and Chandler being made for MSG?
It caught me off guard, just in the fact that I think, because we had also interviewed Justin Gaethje earlier in the week at Top Golf of all places, and Justin Gaethje said he was also like, it was a very strange scene. Justin Gaethje had like his own like private Top Golf like suite where he was hitting golf balls, and he was just he'd hit a golf ball and like turn around and talk to us. It was a very
this like he invited the media to this, or did you guys just stand up there?
It was a UFC like they were basically just kind of introducing a lot of the creative around Noche UFC. They didn't, without giving anything away, like the posters, and they had like the people that made the costumes that you can interview, and all of the new ring girls, which Fabiano absolutely loved every second of, if you know who Fabiano is. I do blew a spot on that too. But Gaethje was, he said he wanted Hooker, Oliveira, Poirier, or in one of those, or even Volkanovski.
Yeah.
The Volk fight, I didn't think was going to be realistic, because Volk and his team seem pretty confident they're going to get the title shot against the winner of Max and Ilya. Why would you risk fighting Justin Gaethje? Because you fight Justin Gaethje, you're more likely than not going to go to the hospital. The Hooker fight, I was very interested in because it was a new matchup. And then, I mean, Poirier Gaethje 3 for Poirier's last fight seemed to make all the sense in the world. And then the Oliveira fight, I wanted to see Justin and Charles fight, because Charles didn't make weight for the championship fight. I know there was that whole controversy. I just wanted to have them match up again. But when Charles and Chandler got announced, I just said, oh, well, they promised a title shot to Chandler if he takes this fight. And Charles is on the losing streak after losing Arman, so he can't really say no. I know he had just beaten Beneil, but I think he did want to get in the good graces of the UFC, because remember when he got that cut over his forehead, they were filming that documentary of the UFC, and Dana White's like, what's this guy sparring a week before he's supposed to fly on? He seems really pissed. He seems really pissed at Charles. So I'm sure Charles wanted to do him a favor. Plus, the luster of Madison Square Garden cannot be overstated, or whoever it is. Like, everyone wants to fight there. Like, Islam wanted to fight there, and there was that world where, would you put John and Islam on the same card and just make this a massive pay-per-view? Islam just wasn't ready. I mean, I like the fight. I think when they first announced it, Chandler was a favorite, which seems crazy to me, odds-wise. And then all of a sudden, Charles swung to the favor. So I think it'll be a fairly pick 'em fight, but I would have to imagine Charles should be favored, and I would probably pick Charles. But, I mean, Mike, were you at that fight? Because, like, he was winning until he wasn't. Chandler was doing really well until he just got clipped on the jaw.
Yeah, he had a good first round. I mean, he was fighting out of the choke and stuff for a bit there, surviving the back position. But yeah, he had his moments, but that was during the Charles Oliveira run where he would get dropped every fight and then come back and win. So
that was kind of the beginning of
what does it really mean if he was winning them all? So yeah, that was I don't know, like, you would envision it would go a little bit the same, but who knows? Charles is being through some tough fights. It's 5 rounds again.
Is this a 5-round co-main?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So I don't know. Like, I think if you're Chandler, this seems like a good time to catch Oliveira, as opposed to last time, which seemed like the worst time you could possibly catch him. He had all the momentum in the world. So I don't know. This dude's had 2 years to sit out. He's been through a lot of wars. He treats his body really well. I think he's more live to win this fight than he was the last time around. I guess that's something.
Yeah,
Loves to go walking through the forest and talking about live
Sure
on his
does.
I
Instagram.
feel sorry for him if he loses, though.
Hey, your mate Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. What do you think?
I mean,
I like Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker rematch, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just biased.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's just a little more history with the Gaethje fight. I think it's a perfect kind of swan song for both of them. I mean, Gaethje, I think, has a little more blood in him for like the fight game and another run, as he talked about in that scrum Jose said. But as he also said, like if he gets put out bad again, like he did against Holloway, it'll probably be the end for him. And it's very possible if Poirier was to win, it would be in a fashion like that. So maybe it's kind of a double retirement fight. There's the storyline, the trilogy. I don't know. I mean, as Jose, I think, kind of said earlier too, with their first fight, I believe was in Arizona, where Justin is from.
In the arena that Gaethje would wrestle States in. That was the big story.
Yeah, so you do the trilogy in New Orleans.
New Orleans, 100%.
Freaking blast. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
The Smoothie King
I'm
Center.
all
Let's go.
I'm all for
Smoothie
it.
King Center, one of the best names for for an arena. Let me just share my screen for a sec. Can you guys see this? The rankings.
Sure
All right, so all right, we got Dan Hooker over here, fellas. Obviously, friend of the show and a legend, and we all love watching him fight. No bias. But okay, Dustin Poirier, let's say he fights Justin Gaethje. So those two fellas are out. Charles Oliveira, he's out of action. Obviously, he's fighting Justin Gaethje. I mean, he's fighting Chandler. Sorry, fellas, early in the morning here. And Armin is taken up with this big dog over here. Apparently, there's not going to be an interim fight. I don't really see Armin fighting again. I'll get you guys' thoughts on that in a sec. So who the hell are we getting? I just clicked into something. Who the hell are we? And how do I get out of this? Okay. Am I still presenting? No, we're back.
You're good.
Now.
You're good.
We're good. Who the hell are we going to get to fight Dan Hooker next, fellas? Because here's my thought. Is it Conor McGregor? Is Dan Hooker the perfect fight now for Conor McGregor?
I mean,
he's not going to wrestle
that'd
him.
be good. I mean, that'd be good
forward.
That'd be good for Dan. That's for sure.
I think the fact you're even asking this question is a win for him. So it's not out of the realm. The door's open now, right? Like,
let's get the headlines going, fellas.
You know, especially if Chandler, he could beat Oliveira, but he could break his hand or tear an ACL or something. Like, it's no guarantee he'll be available if Conor's wanting to fight in the first quarter of next year. So the options are open. I think I saw a comment somewhere saying like Conor versus Masvidal. I think that could be in play as well as an option. I think Dan he's not out of the running, and I think you bring him up, like, certainly possible. Anyone could fight Conor. No one could fight Conor, but he's one of the names that feels at least realistic. So, yeah, I don't think it's impossible.
So you guys think this Masvidal versus Conor thing, like Jose, you think this thing has legs?
I mean, I wouldn't hate it. I mean, in terms of crossover appeal to the casual audience, I mean, those are two of the more popular names and two very popular fan bases with like the Latin American and the Irish community. But I also think we have to see how Holloway and Ilya plays out, because if Max wins, he also holds the BMF title, and he has gone up to lightweight before. Because, like, I mean, Conor has long said the rematch with Max could be a big fight, and you know, Max could also be a thing, and then Volk could fight an interim title fight against, I don't know, Movzar, Diego Lopez, or rematch Ilya for the interim title, and the winner of that goes on to fight Max in either a fourth fight for Volk or a rematch for Ilya. I think, again, we're going to get a lot of answers after this Abu Dhabi card, too, because Max holds two titles and only one of them is on the line. And we all know, like, everyone's like, why isn't the BMF title on the line? Well, because if Max loses, because Ilya is no pushover by any means, he's still a champion, and you can still use Max Holloway in a headlining spot for UFC, even if he's not the lightweight champion of the world, just because he has that BMF title. So, I mean, yeah, Max versus Dan Hooker at lightweight for the BMF title. Like, come on. That's just, both those dudes are about to go to the hospital after that fight.
Jose told me he wanted to see Dan versus Volkanovski, but he was too scared to bring it up on the show.
Right. I did. Sure did. I mean, it's obviously never going to happen, but I mean, I'd still watch the hell out of it.
Oh, dude, that would be a great fight, man. It's going to be really fascinating. What about this, Mike? All right. Friend of this show right here, Colby Covington, was supposed to pop up for UFC 309. We never saw that matchup pop up. What do you do with Colby now? And what do you think that no matchup got announced? Are they just having a tough time figuring out what to do with him next?
I don't know. I mean, it's always hard to read into Colby. He's one of the more elusive people in terms of pinning down where he'll be in terms of like a next fight. But
he wanted Dustin Poirier, but that wasn't going to happen.
Never.
Yeah, no, hard pass on that. Do you know who I want to see Colby Covington fight? Any relevant ranked welterweight coming off of any one of them. Any one of them. Jack Della Maddalena, Sean Brady, Ian Gary, the winner of Wonder Boy and Buckley, like anyone who is ranked and coming off a win. Because if Colby wins that, he shuts people up who say he has no ranked wins over current UFC fighters, which is true.
I think we all know he's not at UFC 309 because there's not a chance in hell they're going to put John Jones and Colby Covington on the same stage together at a press conference.
That's just rumors too, didn't we?
I know, and like everyone's like, I don't know how realistic that is. In terms of Colby, who should he fight next? I think. I mean, it'll depend on because if this Tampa card still doesn't have a headline. If they want to do Jorge Masvidal versus Leon Edwards in the main event of that Tampa card, just because, 3-piece Minnesota was in London, they can fight in Jorge Masvidal's home state of Florida. Leon said he's wanted to come back by the end of the year. That fight, I think, is actually a big money fight for both men. If Conor's coming back first quarter of 2025, we don't know what card he's going to fight because we have obviously they have to go to Sydney at some point. There's rumors of London cards, rumors of LA cards. You're not going to put Conor in LA because the taxes are astronomical and they're not going to want to pay out a Conor McGregor gate with those taxes. They're going to want to stick him in Las Vegas. If John Jones retires, do you have Tom Aspinall headline a London card? But if they do LA or something like that, and they do something like Shavkat and Belal in first quarter 2025, and Conor isn't ready to go, I think Ian Gary versus Colby is the co-main event of Belal and Shavkat would make a lot of sense because you have the natural built-in backup with Ian or Colby, either one, where if Shavkat or Belal can't make it, you can slot them in. But again, Ian seems pretty steadfast that he wants to fight on the co-main event of a Conor card, and then Colby could just fight Ian on the co-main event of that because Colby and Conor and Ian and whoever Conor's fighting all out of press conference is just going to generate a whole bunch of numbers. So yeah, again, we'll find out the next couple of months, I think.
Mike Bohn making noises in the background. What's wrong, Mike?
Nothing. I'm just feeling
hey, my Bohn's not feeling Colby Covington at the moment.
Comeback fight here, which feels
all right. Well, before we wrap up, fellas, I got a couple of quick questions here, not related to fighting. First off, wearing this top, what are we feeling about Happy Gilmore 2 here? Do we think this is going to deliver? Can it land? We saw Coming to America 2 was an absolute embarrassment. The new Beverly Hills Cop was kind of like kind of hard to watch, but still fun. Mike, what are we expecting here from Adam Sandler? Putting on the Boston jersey once again trying to make it happen.
Yeah, Jose will probably give a more sophisticated answer to this question because I know he's a bigger movie buff than me. But yeah, I mean, Happy Gilmore is obviously one of my favorite movies growing up and stuff. So I just hope they don't butcher it too badly. But I love Adam Sandler, so I hope he can pull something out.
What do we think here, Jose?
I'm going to watch it. I will watch it 100%, but I don't know what the sequel is going to be about because it's not like it's a movie that had an open ending. I mean, Carl's Weathers passed away, so we're not going to be able to get his ghost, the ghost of, what is it? What was his character's name? The one with the one hand. I can't even remember. Chubbs, I think. Yeah, so we're not going to get Ghost Chubbs, which is a bummer all around.
His grandmother has passed away, too.
Yeah, so, I mean, if they bring back all the characters like Ben Stiller and Julie Brown and all those guys, then I'm all for it. I will watch it. I am holding out any sort of judgment until I see an actual trailer. It's also Netflix. It's not.
It's no stamp of approval.
What's that?
I said we cover MMA, so saying you'll watch it is no stamp of approval.
It's also Netflix, so I want to Netflix doesn't really put out the best movies, especially when it comes to Adam Sandler.
What's the best Adam Sandler movie of all time? Happy Gilmore, you think, Mike?
That's probably off the top of my head. That's probably it for me. In tone with this, we'll just continue to build up Happy Gilmore 1 because if they don't.
That's true.
Over on this one, it just makes it sadder.
Jose, as we wrap up, best Adam Sandler movie?
I do like
your favorite.
Billy Madison. I quote that the most.
Good choice.
Yeah, I quote that the most. Happy Gilmore is a close second, though. And I do love The Longest Yard.
The longest yard's a classic, man.
Yeah.
Love it, Mr. Deeds. All right, fellas. Well, hopefully that second movie is decent and we don't have to eat pieces of shit like that for breakfast. That's Mike Bond. That's Jose Youngs. This has been Submission Radio Live. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to follow the fellas. Of course, a lot of big things happening at MMA Fighting, MMA Junkie. Just before we wrap up, what do people need to look out for, Mike and Jose?
I mean,
More
we
flight
got all sorts
delays.
of, we got all kinds of flight delays on coming. Mike, are you going to Salt Lake?
No, we'll have cold coffee there. My next one
Oh.
is Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. So
I'll see you there. I'll see you there. But we got a bunch of interviews. Go watch Damon and Mike and Guillermo interview people on MMA Fighting's YouTube page.
Wow, that's what a sell, Mike.
but first, go to MMA Junkies YouTube page and the website and the social media.
Yeah, go to MMA Junkies YouTube page, leave a comment saying MMA Fighting is better, and then hop over to MMA Fighting.
If you want to be a liar in your life, go ahead and do that.
Do that.
And go shave your balls with Manscaped, 20% off with code word submission plus free shipping, and hide those browsing histories with NordVPN /submission when you're done. Thank you so much, fellas. That's it for us today. Take care.